this has continued to just be an incredibly productive week, both with squatting and deadlifting and pressing. Everything is just moving, you know, almost better than I could have asked for it. My squats are super smooth, as evidenced by these reps. I warmed up with a set of 10 on the open bar, a set of 5 at 135, and then I did a set of 3 at 225 just to kind of get things going. I really focused on making sure that I know I mentioned that I'm making sure I'm locking my core in. This time I kind of focused on two separate cues. One, locking my core in during the initial breath between each reps. So as you see my shoulders and the bar rise at the beginning, right before it hits that peak, as I'm drawing my breath in, I'm locking in my core, and it is kind of working a lot better with holding that core activation. And then I'm focusing intensely on utilizing my hips, which I know I've mentioned on Thursday and Tuesday, but making sure that I can lock in that position and focus on the hips and the quads in tune and do the reps. And that cue has really been helping, or at least today really helped drive the movement for me. So there's something that I can benefit from that. Now I am getting a little bit of not so much like soreness, but just extra activation in the lower back erectors. And I know in the past that was caused by my feet from being too far apart during my squat. So I need to adjust my stances and just make it a little bit more narrow to accommodate for that. But at the same time, it's really interesting because to get heavy or a high hip activation and strong quad activations with the front squats, I had to have my hips further apart, and that would allow me to stay more upright. So it's an interesting little quandary, and I know that it's technically a different movement, but there's a lot of similarities between the front squat and the back squat. You know, one in that it's a squat, but two, just kind of the overall movement. But there's so much different mechanically in terms of how you have to bear the load of the weight and your body positioning. That really kind of changes things a little bit. So I want to kind of think this over because I want to be able to encourage high hip activation, but it's a little bit more difficult to do that with your stance being a bit more narrow. But the other aspect of that is that there is carryover from a deadlift, because my deadlift position is going to be forcing myself into a narrow stance to do my conventional deadlifts, which can help. And that was a thought that crossed my mind whenever I was doing these squats and just kind of feeling my hip activation, and that it was very similar to activating for a deadlift. I did a little cheeky pause squat at the end because I felt, hey, I'm just going to sit for a second and kind of hold that load and then activate my hamstrings and finish everything off. But it's a very similar activation to a deadlift. But I don't want to be in a position to where I'm using my hamstrings to squat, because that's not necessarily a squat. That's like an extremely wide stance, like west side barbell style squat, that I'm not really kind of looking for, especially like a low bar. I've never been comfortable doing low bar squats. It just feels off. So I don't know. There's applications to it. There's some benefit, but I don't know. I just want to see if I can get a real, true, high bar back squat with a somewhat more narrow stance than what I have. Not necessarily like a super narrow where your feet are almost together. I'm not gonna be able to manage doing that just because of the way that my legs naturally sit. I can't sit with my legs, with my feet pointing straight, because my knees will point inwards because of some poor alignment with my legs. But I want to try to get a narrower stance in my back squat, and I know that's going to benefit me and kind of prevent a lot of the excess lower back activation, especially in lower back erectors. That being said, though, moving on over to these deficit deadlifts, honestly, it moved really well. I don't think I've done these for like 3, maybe 4 weeks. I think I last did them. I was only able to get out like 2 sets at like 275 or something. So I decided I'll go for 260. Just kind of feel it out. I probably only go up like 5 pounds each week on these, just because the proportion that you usually see with your deficit deadlifts is it's equivalent to like 75% of your working weight. So, I'm looking at somewhere in the ballpark of about like 330, 340 on a 5x5 with these. Just kind of feeling that out. It wasn't that bad. I was focusing, as I have on the past, on locking my hips right there and finding that position to where I need to initiate the pull. And that is something that I think mentally has really helped me with my conventional deadlifts in general. Just being able to find that point where I have maximum tension in the hamstrings, and that I can fully activate my upper back, my lats and my shoulders to engage and pull the bar. So right there, lock, pull, and it's becoming extremely fluid. And my back is going to be a little rounded at the beginning, but as long as your back stays kind of in the same position the whole way with the rep, you're fine. It's when you shift positions, either from straight to extremely rounded, or from rounded kind of straighten out, it can damage. It changes the loading in your back, and it can really kind of hurt you by doing that. But I'm saying just a little bit rounded the whole time, and I'm straightening out as it goes up. It's not anything too severe, it's fine. That's fine, and that's kind of conducive to that movement with the deficit deadlifts. I could get lower, and I think that's just part of losing a little bit of hip flexibility, almost like a snatch grip deadlift, to be able to stay flat with that. But just got to get that back. So they could even be something to try too, or just doing snatch grip deadlifts to kind of really hone in on that lower positioning with the hips, and really kind of getting that strength and that movement off the floor, because you're adding so much more distance to start, getting your conventional deadlift position when you're pulling that bar, and you have more height to go because of how high that bar is going to sit relative to you normally, because of how far out your arms are. So that might be something to try out, just kind of see how it feels. I have no idea what I could do on a snatch grip deadlift for a 5x5, but I don't know. Maybe something to just kind of play around with. Outside of that, doing these dumbbell presses felt pretty good. Taking a few days off instead of doing them, 2 sessions in a row like I had the week before. Started out with 40 pounds for the first 3 sets, and then moved up to 42.5 on the last set. The change plates are probably some of the best things I've ever bought myself, simply for stuff like this, to where I can go up just a little bit of a time, where it's still a somewhat significant percentage of the weight. 2.5 pounds at 40 pounds is a little bit over 5%. I think like 6.5 or something like that. It just made it quite a bit easier to do that. It moved fairly well in the first 3 sets. The 4th set was a little bit of effort to do with that 42.5 pounds, but I was able to really kind of push through that and finish it. I don't think I'm at a point where I can do all 4 sets of that weight yet, but I was able to do it with this session fairly easily. Well, not necessarily easy, but I was able to get through it without having to like stop and really kind of force myself through reps. And I focused a lot on really getting that good chest activation. There's going to be a little bit of tricep involvement. I mean, there's tricep involvement because it's a press, going up. You're having to use that muscle to push the weight up anyway. But, it slows down a little bit there, but I still was able to get the reps out. They're all clean reps. It's not like I'm trying to like throw the weight up and get the rep as dirty as possible and just get it done. So I think I can probably realistically do 2 sets of 40 and 2 sets of 42.5 on Tuesday next week. As for everything else, I'm probably going to do 260 on the back squats and just start moving up from there. I will probably stop at 310 if I can get there without dying, you know. But 310 or 315 realistically. Outside of that, oh my god. I'd be looking at starting to up the weights on my deadlifts, my axle bar deadlifts, the deficit deadlifts, all the variations that I have, and just kind of slowly building up tolerance and my my rep work again with the 5x5s. I think my goal right now with the 5x5s on deadlifts is to try to get up to anywhere between like 330 and 360 on the 5x5. And if I can top out anywhere in that range, I'll start training like doubles and singles comfortably, because that'll put me in a good range to be able to start approaching doing work towards a 500-pound single. At least that's kind of how it worked with the trap bar deadlifts. I would think that at least with the workload and everything, I might be able to pull it off with the conventional deadlifts. I don't know. That kind of remains to be seen, but at least with having one session of traditional deadlifts and then 2 sessions of doing something of a deficit, one with true deficit deadlifts and the other with being a stiff bar, axle bar, you're forcing yourself basically to start at lower position to break the weight off the ground. And that lack of a whip, contributes to that, but also makes it harder to move the weight in the first place. And the grip aspect of it is definitely huge in being able to help contribute to pulling heavier weights. Because I want to be able to pull 500 raw. I don't want to have to use straps or a belt to do it. I know I can do it without a belt. I've done it on the trap bar. I can move that weight. I just need to get to a point where I can do it on a deadlift bar. And I think realistically, probably 3 months to do that at this point. So I'd be looking at the end of the year to really get an earnest attempt in with a 500-pound deadlift. So we'll see how that prediction goes.